So again, welcome. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight. This is our third program in our cooking series with Chef Marshall Goldstein, who joins us monthly from Toledo, Ohio. And tonight, we are making Hamantaschen in preparation for the upcoming holiday. And I've been told that he is going to be letting loose a little bit and getting creative with the traditional recipe and mixing it up in the kitchen a bit. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has in store for us tonight. I told him when we were speaking, the only thing I'm disappointed in is I won't get to sample anything after, but maybe this time I'll take a chance and try the recipe at home. So I will turn it over to you, Chef Marshall. Just a reminder, like I said, I think many of you have joined us before, but feel free to go ahead and send any questions or comments that you have through the chat while Chef is demonstrating, and we'll go ahead and get those answered for you. All right.
All right, Katie, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here again. And especially tonight, we're about to celebrate the Festival of Esther, one of my favorite stories. And growing up, it meant so much to me because I just love to be able to get my hands on a Hamantaschen filled with that jam, that preserve, something that just really, really, really was sweet and you couldn't get enough of it. As I got older, I came to realize that I didn't care for the man or the mun, however you want to pronounce it. As the tradition goes, the Hamantaschen, poppy stuffed pocket. I didn't care so much for the marmalade or the apricot filling. Strawberry was okay. Raspberry, yeah, I definitely like that. And as I got into teaching and started having the kids come into class, every year they looked forward to it. And I had to find something that was really going to just bring them in, because I don't think, other than my younger sister, I don't think I've met that many people that really, really like the poppy seed filling so much, especially the young kids. And so I thought, what's going to really, really attract them? What's really going to keep their attention going? So I came up with the idea of starting to stuff my Hamantaschen with chocolate chips. Kids loved it. They thought it was the greatest thing. And of course, they still like the favorite jams and the preserves, because after the kids would leave, when Sunday school was over, of course, I got to do cleanup, and there was probably about 60 or 70 different spoons stuck on every single table and every counter and anywhere place you could imagine all over the classroom that I had to go and pry up afterwards, which was always fun. Tonight's recipe is a great recipe, one that's actually a quite simple recipe. It doesn't have that many ingredients in it, other than the fillings. And basically what we're going to do is, give me just a second here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make a little bit of the filling first. A little bit of the dough first, and then we're going to go ahead and get to the fillings. Over here, we have 2 cups of flour, a half cup of sugar, a teaspoon of baking powder, 2 eggs, a pinch of salt, and a stick of butter. 1 stick of butter, it's 8 tablespoons exactly. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to combine all the dry ingredients first. So the flour, the sugar, baking powder, pinch of salt. Somebody didn't want to be forgotten in my little production here, my lovely dog, Rocky. We're going to go ahead and we're going to beat the eggs up, lightly beaten. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started by lightly combining all of the dry ingredients. Yeah. See, nice. So they spread out nice and even. And then basically what I'm just going to do is I'm going to mix them up a little bit here. I prefer to sift the flour. I pre-sifted it before we started. And if you want to, you could even sift through the baking powder and the salt as well with the sugar. And we're just going to mix it up a little bit more. Now that we've got that taken care of, we're going to go ahead and we're going to push in our butter. And just in case, this is an unsalted butter, by the way. I prefer unsalted butter, especially when we have a sweet type of product that we want. There's a question why we want to sift the flour. Basically, flour comes real clumpy, and we want a nice smooth texture to our dough. So if we put it through a sifter, it gets all those clumps out. There's flour comes from a germ, actual kernel of a germ in the actual plant itself. And when they mill it, sometimes little pieces of the germ or the kernel, if they will, actually get into the milled flour. So we want to sift that out because we don't want to put that into the product. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the butter in there, nice and easy. We want the butter to basically be like when you're making a pie dough, like little pea-sized pellets inside the flour, so that you might get a better idea. See how it's actually starting to form those nice little clumps. And you can see how it's nice little clumps right in the dough, just like we were making a pie shell, if you will. I'm going to go ahead and get them nice and small. You want to go ahead and scrape down. The best thing is to always remember, whatever recipe you're using in any kind of dough or bread, is to always remember to sift your flour and to scrape down the bowl. It really helps a lot. Now, once we've got it down to a pretty decent size and the butter is nice and soft, we can go ahead and start to add the eggs in, just like so. Wash my hands real quick. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead. I highly suggest, if you have a cover for your mixer, put it on at this point in time. It's really a good idea. We're going to start out on the slow speed. And we're going to work the flour into the butter and the eggs. You want to get in there and take a look. You can see how the dough is starting to form. Real nice. Real slow. We don't want to add too much heat to this. We want to be able to use the dough. A lot of times the dough that you make, this particular cookie dough, like most cookie dough recipes, you can use it almost immediately, but the idea is to go ahead and let it rest and cool down, so it's much easier, more pliable when you roll it out. We're gonna break down the bowl again. And you can see nice clumps of the dough is actually starting to form, which is exactly what we want. Turn the speed up a little bit. If you want to take a look a little bit deeper inside, you're starting to see how those little pea-sized pellets are starting to form a little bit bigger. And
actually forming the dough. It takes probably a good 5 or 10 minutes for this to really come together and form a real nice dough ball. In the end, I usually take it out. Like most people would let it form all the way. I'll tend to take it out and form it the rest of the way on my own. So you can see it's starting to get really clumpy. We're going to turn the speed down a little bit. You don't need that anymore. And there we go. So then what we want to do is we want to take it out. And just so you know, if you wanted to taste the dough, I tell people you can taste the dough, but I highly suggest you don't eat much of it, primarily because cookie dough is a dough that a lot of people take for granted that eating cookie dough won't hurt you. And people say, well, don't eat the cookie dough because it's got raw eggs in it. Well, by scientific standards in terms of culinary, it's not the eggs that harm you. It's really not the eggs. It's the flour and the baking powder that make a chemical reaction along with your stomach acids inside that get you sick. So a lot of people used to think it was the eggs. It's really not. So we take it out and you can see it's nice dough ball. You see there's nice butter chunks in there. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to go ahead and lightly form a nice little ball of dough. I like to make a log, just like rolling challahs. I like taking a piece of parchment paper. Once I get it to a certain point, you put it in the parchment paper, or you can use wax paper if you prefer. Go ahead, twist the ends nice and tight. And if you're doing this ahead of time, it's okay. To go ahead and mark it. Oh, I almost put February 29th. Today is the first day of March. And then what you want to do is you want to take this and you want to refrigerate it for about a half an hour to an hour. Now, hold on just a minute. Then you get to a point where it's been refrigerated for a little bit. Hey, how did I do that? Well, this is the one that's not marked with Hamantaschen on it. You might have thought that I was pretty magical and I was fooling you all. But we let it refrigerate for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Then we go ahead and we're going to unroll it. And you'll see it's got a nice little shine to it. That's all the beautiful butter that's inside of it. What we're going to do after that is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take it over here to where we're going to be rolling it out. I highly suggest you have a little bit of extra flour and that you go ahead and lightly sprinkle some flour onto the surface. You're going to take your dough and we're going to go ahead and cut a nice piece off. You can cut it into fourths if you want. That makes it easier. We're going to put the remaining pieces up here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this beautiful piece in a little bit of flour. You can put some flour on your hand and just press it down, just like you're flattening a cookie. And then we're going to flour up our rolling pin and we're going to roll it out real nice and light. We don't want it to stick. It doesn't matter that it's going to crack a little bit. We want to go ahead and roll it out. I'm going to tell you about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. This is a cookie dough, so it's not a dough that's going to rise really, really super high. As you can see, when it starts to stick, we pull it up. We pull some flour into it.
We flatten it out a little bit more. Some people like their Hamantaschens a little bit more thicker than others. It's a cookie, so it's really a preference up to you. Then I take a nice little cutter. I just happen to have this really cute one. You can use a glass. You can use the lid of a jar, okay? Or you can use whatever kind of cylinder that you can find. Sometimes maybe even the plastic top off of a can of cooking spray works wonderful. And then you just go ahead. I start at the very back outer edge, press down, comes out beautiful. Then I just go ahead and go all the way around.
Does the dough really have to be chilled?
The idea of chilling the dough basically comes from letting the gluten inside the dough rest a little bit. If it gets too hot, so when the dough's in the mixing bowl, there's lots of friction going on, lots and lots of friction going on. So we're heating the dough up, making it less pliable. Okay, this is nice, real squeezy. If it heated it up, it wouldn't be so easy to mold together. And that's what we really, really aim for. Melting a little bit of some chocolate here. You might all wonder why. The idea is to do something a little different than the norm. And as you'll see now, since I've gotten to the point.
Oh, the camera is not right there.
Hold on just a second. Little technical difficulties here.
It's good to see them.
There you go. It's back. Can you hear me, Chef There you go. You have to just unmute now. Chef Marshall, you're mute. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, so what I was about to say is now that we've gotten to the fun part of filling the Hamantaschen, I'll tell you some of the fun stuff we're going to do tonight. I'm melting a little chocolate here, and I don't use milk chocolate for this. Milk chocolate has too many milk solids in it. If you've ever noticed when you eat milk chocolate, it has like a white shine to it. And when you go to melt it, it's much harder to melt than normal darker chocolate and the bitter chocolate, the semi-sweet chocolate, if you will. The reason for that is because they take a lot of the milk chocolate out, a lot of the milk solids out of the chocolate. That's how we have a darker chocolate. It's more bitter because we're actually taking the sweetest part of the cacao bean out of the process. So some of the fillings that I have here, I have traditional man, which is poppy seed. You're going to get a good look. Okay. It's my sister's favorite. I have red raspberry preserves, which is always delicious. It's really good with chocolate too. Some strawberry preserves, some apricot preserves, some baking bite-sized chocolate caramel dulce de leche truffles. I was in the store and I saw those and I said, oh, definitely. Why not? I think that Queen Esther would approve of those, as well as she would approve of these, which just so happens to be my favorite. I don't like chocolate too much, but if you've got peanut butter around, I'm game. And then, of course, some roasted peanuts, sea salted roasted peanuts. And so basically what I'm going to do let's start out with the truffle. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a little bit of the strawberry and we're going to put it right in the center of the Hamantaschen. Then what we're going to do is we're going to place 3 of the truffles right on the inside. And then we're going to take the sides and we're going to pinch those together like a 3-cornered hat. Now, I want to caution everybody, when you get to this point, you could leave it just like this. You'll notice some of the dough is cracking a little bit. That's okay. It's probably where I cut it on the outer edge. What I do is I take this here. You can get a little bit closer. I take the corner, the tip right here, and I just go ahead and fold it over. And I do that with the ends as well. Just fold it over, make it nice. Okay, and pinch. Now, hopefully that's going to make a really awesome Hamantaschen when it's done, because we want it to stay closed so that none of the fillings come out. And they're very easy to pick up. As long as you have a nice floured surface, it's relatively easy to go ahead and work with the dough. And again, this happens to be one of my favorite ones. Now, if you're not putting anything else in but the preserves, you could probably put in a decent amount. Just realize that you've got to close that and you don't want a big mess. Unless, of course, you want to revisit your childhood days when you went to if you were in my cooking class, which none of you weren't, unfortunately, and have sticky jam all over the place. And then what we're going to do is just the same. We're going to take the sides and we're going to go ahead and pinch them together to form the top part of the triangle. And then we're going to pinch the lower 2 together to form the bottom part. If the dough cracks like this or comes apart, just fix it with your fingers. It's okay. You're going to be folding the dough over anyways. The idea is to keep it in the form of a triangle. And I will tell you, over 28 years of teaching the cooking class at Temple Shomer Immunim here in Toledo, I've seen some really interesting looking Hamantaschens over the years. But of course, you have to realize that when you teach several different grade levels, that's to be expected. And besides, it's a lot of fun. You never see how amazing you feel when you're sitting with a 5-year-old in your cooking class at the temple making Hamantaschens, and he's got jelly and chocolate smeared all over his face and about a ton of chocolate chips in a Hamantaschen that's way too big. And he smiles and he's so happy because he's just had so much fun making Hamantaschens that he gets to take home with them. Now, the leftover dough, we don't want to waste that. That comes in handy because we want to be able to make more. So what we do is we just go ahead and take that in a ball, leave it to the side. We're going to start with a fresh dough, a little sprinkle here and there. We're going to go right into it, just like we did before. Now you'll notice I keep most of the flour over here. The idea is to try and keep as little flour in the dough as possible. What happens is it will definitely go ahead and dry the dough out. And let's see. All right, for my sister. Rochelle, if you're watching, these 4 are for you. And if she is watching, she's probably going 4. I said 2 dozen, not 4. Okay, and again, I'm going to just lightly pinch these together. Quite a few years ago, people always ask me when I do these demos, they'll ask me the question, well, how many of those have you ever made in your lifetime? Kind of like challah. People ask me how many challahs I think I've made so far in my lifetime. And I tell them, well, I taught for 28 years and we made challah at least 10 times in a year with the kids. And so probably, figure, at least 100 or so in just class alone. But I've also done it commercially over the years. And I've probably made a couple of, I'm guessing probably my fair share without embellishing it, probably about 10 or 20,000 challahs. In terms of Hamantaschen, quite a few years ago, my wife and I were going to Israel and I wanted to buy a camcorder to catch all of our wonderful memories on. And so I went ahead and started selling Hamantaschen at one of the Jewish independent living homes here in Toledo called Pelham Manor. And one night at 3:00 in the morning, I was down here baking them. And I'd come to realize I ran out of boxes and I went to go see what my count was. And I had come to a count of 1,200 dozen Hamantaschens. That was just 1 year. So it's kind of interesting when you start doing these things, you don't think about, you don't think that this is going to be something you're going to do at an elevated level, but you never know. All right, we're going to get this first batch in the oven right quickly. Let's see. I didn't really do that many strawberry ones. I haven't done any apricot ones.
Chef, there were a couple questions about the poppy. Rochelle, I can confirm, is on, and she's asking, where do you buy the poppy filling? And then Heinke was asking if you use prepared poppy seed mixture.
Okay, so to answer Heinke's question first, yes, I do use a prepared mixture. Many, many moons ago, when I was much more ambitious, I did make my own poppy seed filling. It takes a long time to get it just right so that it lays into the Hamantaschen. Many people make their own nowadays, and the results that I always see is that it spreads. It's too runny. So somewhere in the process, they didn't thicken it enough, or they didn't use enough honey in the process of making it, to the point where it I can't, no better expression, but globbed up. So it was really, really like tar-like thick. It's a very, very long, I did it the 1 year. My sister doesn't realize that sometimes you go to certain lengths to provide happiness for those you love. But I tried it the 1 year. It was good because I strained it, but I never was like 100% thrilled with it. In terms of where you find poppy seed filling at now, believe it or not, Kroger's. But you have to find a Kroger's that's like centrally located and is busy enough for that area. We have a Kroger's in Sylvania, which is near our Jewish population. We used to have one in central Toledo, a little bit closer to me. I go to either one of those. I also go to the Kroger's that's out nearby. A lot of stores will carry poppy seed filling. The best place to go, believe it or not, is to find a like a health food store, or where they have organic foods. Because a lot of times you'll find some really interesting, hard to get things there. I tell people nowadays the best way to find anything, because I'm an old guy, is use your technology. Go ahead and Google it, and sometimes it'll show up where to buy it. Or you can even put into Google, where can I buy poppy seed filling? I prefer to use the already prepared. It's just easier when you're making as many Hamantaschens that I make, especially the ones when I'm making for my sister. You want to use the prepared. It just makes it a lot easier. So we're going to do a couple apricot ones, and then we're going to do some strawberry. Yes, my family are always the ones that receive these delights well. I've been very fortunate to have such an incredible family. If it weren't for my sister, I probably would have never met my beautiful wife. She brought my beautiful wife home to meet my parents for Passover many, many moons ago, about 32 or 33 years ago. And we had just missed each other. I had just moved down to Key West, Florida. And I came back about 3 years later, and thank my lucky stars, she was still there hanging around. All right. Now, we're going to go ahead. Let's see, bring it over here. Okay, so when you pinch the corners, notice what happens. It pushes this up and opens it up. So right before you put them in the oven, I tell people really, really make this center small. Okay, the smaller you make the center and really, really try to cover up the filling, the less it's going to open up inside the oven. Everybody has their own secrets to doing things in terms of how you get things to work for yourself the best. So whatever works for you is great. But I always tell everybody, because people will say, well, your Hamantaschens come out, they don't break. How is that? Well, it's because we all have our own secrets. And my little secret is making sure that I really tighten up that center. Even if some squirts out, that's fine. That's perfect. If it squirts out, chances are it'll come over the top a little bit, and it'll actually glaze the top part of the Hamantaschen, which isn't a bad thing anyways. Okay. Ooh, that's the chocolate one. All right, then we want to go ahead and put these into an oven. You can use a convection oven or you can use a convention oven. The top is convention, which means there's no fans going on. We want to go ahead. Hamantaschens are cookies, so we really, really want to be careful. I like mine to go probably a good 10 to 15 minutes. The recipe it says 20 to 30 minutes. At that 10 to 15 minute mark, I'm kind of taking a look at them. With most cookies are a lot of people mistake cookies for being done. In reality, they're not. The centers aren't baked enough. We want our cookies to be brown on the edges and on the bottom. Once that happens, we go ahead, we take them out, we let them rest at room temperature on top of the stove maybe. And it's perfect because what we really are doing is we're letting the cookie to continue to cook from the pan heat all the way up in through the center. With Hamantaschens, we cook them 15 to 30 minutes. I would probably tell you that a full 30 minutes is maybe a little bit long. If you're using a cake recipe, I say that's probably fine. But using this cookie recipe, like I said, it's 4 or 5 ingredients. We're not looking at it to rise so much. It's more of a sugar cookie-like dough. If you took this dough and you rolled it out and made little drops of it on top of it, it's not going to be like your typical sugar cookie, but it's more of a harder dough than a sugar cookie is. And you could sprinkle cinnamon sugar on it, whatever you want, and it would be wonderful to eat. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little more dough. And a couple more I want to go ahead and make.
Yes, we use the answer.
Good question from my production manager. It's a good question. It's a good question that nobody's really asked just yet. Excuse me. The question was about how many cookies does this recipe make? Well, here's the thing. It really depends on your cutter. It really depends on this. Typically with this, one whole ball of dough usually yields about 2.5 dozen cookies. So about 24 to 30 Hamantaschens. And it's a matter of how we use the dough and then reuse the dough to get the secondary batches. If you get to a point at like 3 o'clock in the morning and you've made 1,200 dozen of Hamantaschens and you're ready to quit and call it a night, whatever dough you have left over, even if it's leftover dough like this, just go ahead and make a nice little log out of it. Knead it a little bit so it's more pliable, and then go ahead and wrap it in wax paper and some saran wrap and maybe aluminum foil, because you really want to protect it from condensation. You can either put it in your refrigerator for use that week, or you can put it in the freezer and it'll last up to 6 months. In case anyone was wondering. Okay. Now, we're gonna have a little fun here. Just a little dab of chocolate. Try not to get it on the counter if you can. Let's see. I love these. These are wonderful. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mash them up a little bit, try and break them up into smaller pieces. Because it'll be easier to close the dough up on it over the top of it. And then these are the ones I like to have fun with. We're going to take some salted roasted peanuts and put those in there. Now, obviously, if you have a peanut allergy, you wouldn't be using the peanut butter or the peanuts. But if you don't, this is a really good one. And what I can tell you, what I don't have here that I've made before,
typically in the past, I've gone ahead and I bought the little caramel squares that you can buy at the little caramel candies you can buy at the store that everyone likes to melt down and make caramel apples. Well, I like to take those and I like to melt them down, put them in a Hamantaschen, and add a roasted pecans and drizzle a little chocolate inside of it. And then once they're done baking, I go ahead and I completely dip them, making a turtle style Hamantaschen. This is just the crazy side, the crazy fun side of doing things that I learned to enjoy through the eyes of children, through Sunday school, for all the years that I taught. They like everything from Hershey Kisses to chocolate chips to peanuts to M&Ms. They love the M&Ms the most. I think they liked mostly eating them more than anything else, obviously. And that was always fun. And that's what drove me to the idea that there's definitely a lot more to what we do in terms of Jewish cuisine. When people talk about Jewish cuisine, they think, what does that exactly mean? Does that mean that I'm cooking something that they cook over in Israel? No, it's part of your heritage. It's what we bring to the table from our families. You know, something that my bubby brought to us, something that my mom's mom, my Busha, brought from the old world that was a custom that was back then and how they did things. And, you know, one of my fondest memories is when I was a young child was watching my Busha, which is my Polish Catholic grandmother on my mom's side, watching her when I was very young, watching her make cabbage rolls one-handed while she had a cup of coffee in his hands, toting a cigarette and making cabbage rolls with the other hand. And it was the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen. And it made me realize this is part of who we are. This is our heritage. This is what we're all about. And making these types of recipes in our homes, hopefully we can pass them along from generation to generation, that we never lose sight of who we are. And hopefully over the 28 years that I taught Sunday school, I brought a little bit of that to the pack. So now you see, I took all the leftover dough. I put it together really nice. You can't see there, but you can see right here, it's got that nice shine from all the butter that's in it. And we're just going to lightly press it, just like we did with all the dough before. Get some nice flour on it. In fact, speaking of family and heritages, I think I've said this before, this is one of my most favorite utensils in my kitchen. This came from my bubby. I'd like to think that these little notches here are not notches that she used to hit me in the head when I was a young kid slamming the screen door of her apartment, but that they were actually notches of how many times she rolled out some type of dough, and she was keeping record of it in her own way. Probably more like how many times she beat it against my head would probably be more accurate. But anyways, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue to roll out the dough. I used my Hamantaschen dough up until it is completely gone. I don't like to waste any part of it. I will get it down to as much as one Hamantaschen worth of dough. And I will go ahead and I will roll it out, flatten it, and find a way to get it into this cutter and make good use of the dough. Now, the fun part about this is my regular production manager, my son Sam, is doing a mitzvah out in Colorado watching my brother-in-law's kids for this week. And he knew that we were going to be making Hamantaschen.
I sent him the link to hopefully get him on. I'm not sure if he's on. I don't think he is. And I told him not to worry because he was worried that there would be no Hamantaschen when he got home. Well, if you know me, you know me well enough that when I do things, I go ahead and I make a little dough to begin with. And so there's always going to be plenty of dough by the time he gets home. So let's see. We're going to go ahead and do some more raspberry. And you can see, just to give you an idea, I don't use a full teaspoon of the filling. So about a half a teaspoon of the filling really works. Okay, because again, when we go to fold this up, we don't want it to be messy. We want it to look really nice. And we want to go ahead and make sure that we got just the right amount of filling in there. Yes, when it comes to the baking part of it, again, we're baking them for about 20 to 30 minutes. 15 minutes in, I check them just to make sure that they're not burning. And also realize everyone's oven is a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you keep an eye on them. And we're going to take a quick look without trying to make a mess here. We're going to take a quick look, see where we're at, just so you can see. We even turn these around. Now you can see from the looks of things, I did a pretty decent job pinching them together at that last second. You pinch them together at the last minute because the dough, when you pinch them together at the beginning and you lay them all out, the dough actually moves. It's actually, I don't want to say live, but the dough actually moves because of the ingredients inside the dough. Now I can tell you, these are very close to being done. Very, very close. If you look at the bottom here, it's got a real nice golden brown to it. I probably would say these are done. And that was probably all of about, I think it was probably about 15 to 20 minutes. It's, yeah, about 17 minutes total. And then we're going to let these cool just a few minutes here. And then we're going to get to the fun. We're going to go ahead and put these together.
Chef, there's a couple questions here. One was, what is the diameter of the cutter?
Probably no more than 3 inches. 3 to 4 inches would be my guess, without actually measuring.
Okay, and then Sharon was wondering if you wanted to sweeten up this recipe, if the family wants a sweeter dough, do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah. Yes, I do. That's a phenomenal question. Years ago, I was looking to do something a little bit different with the dough myself. It's a sweet dough, but I mean, it's not overly sweet. So you could do, one of the things that I tell people that they can do to make the dough much sweeter, use brown sugar. Brown sugar is just amazing in a dough like this. It does change the color of the dough. But to be honest with you, you're going to find yourself liking it much better than the regular sugar. You can use raw sugar. Raw sugar is actually a little bit more powerful in taste than milled sugar. And one thing you could do if you really wanted to, something that I did with my oldest son, Alex, a few years ago, he was in a youth organization called B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, BBYO. And him and his chapter decided to go ahead and have a get together. And they asked me if I could come along and be the feature attraction, if you will. And it was at this time of the year, in fact, I found some pictures from it. And we actually did what we called epic Hamantaschens. We had probably about 20 different types of candies and fillings, probably even more than that. And I went ahead and made the dough, and each one of them wanted to make a Hamantaschen that was probably about 12 inches wide by about 8 inches in terms of a triangle, 8 inches one way and then 12 inches the other way. And what I did that year, I did use some brown sugar in the dough, but I also used I took some milk chocolate and ground it up. And milk chocolate has a much sweeter flavor to it, like I said, than the darker chocolate, because they pull the milk solids out of it. The darker chocolate, that is. And so it doesn't have as sweet as a flavor as the milk chocolate does. And it was amazing how well the Hamantaschen, actually, the dough itself actually held up and made just the most amazing, should I say, epic Hamantaschen you would ever see. And it was wonderful. Okay, let's see. What kind
If
did
you use the brown sugar, would it be like the same amount as the white sugar that you're using, or would you need to change anything?
So here's the thing. Typically when you use brown sugar, you pack it real tight. So if it says 1 cup of brown sugar, I guarantee you're packing it in there pretty tight. You're probably putting more than a full cup of sugar in there in the measurement. I would not pack the brown sugar. I would just measure out a regular half cup and keep it the same measurement. Yeah, most definitely. Okay, now I have a request. The production manager has spoken, which is important. So we're going to make some chocolate and some roasted peanuts in this. This, like I was saying earlier, this is the beauty about Jewish cooking, is it's about our heritage. And many years ago, when I had the kids in class, I came to realize that I had to keep them active and not make them feel bored. And that's why I started coming up with creative ideas to keep them interactive, to keep them involved in the class. And that's when I started saying to myself, everything that we do, like, for example, during Pesach, there's the whole doldrums of having to eat everything matzah. And for many, many years, people would say, we can't eat that because it's, it's got flour in it. It's got some type of rising element to it. So we can't have that, and it's got certain germ in it. You can't do this, you can't do that. So I started thinking about all that can't. And all I kept thinking about was how I wanted to come up with some really great recipes so that I could do something different. And I started making cheesecake. I started making pie using the matzah as a base, and then realizing, hey, most of these recipes that we make, a lot of recipes call for matzah meal. We use matzah meal to make matzah ball soup, to make really nice, fluffy, light matzah balls. And it's the texture, and of course, probably the taste of just matzah by itself is flat. So I started thinking, well, what can be done? Well, most people put chocolate on matzah and called it matzah bark. Okay, yeah, it's good. Some people use peppermint, some people use coconut, some people do this, some people do that. So I started thinking about all the different things that I could make. When I first started, I started making cheesecakes and coming up with an idea to infuse chocolate into the matzah meal as the crust. And then I started thinking, well, I could use that. I could also use nuts. So my crust went from just being a flat matzah crust, elevated up to a nutty, flavorful crust. Of course, my cheesecakes are good. They're Passover cheesecakes. They'll never be as good as my sister's amazing cheesecake that she makes, but they're for Passover. So you kind of put yourself in that frame of mind.
Could you dip the entire Hamantaschen into the chocolate?
The question was, again, I'm sorry.
Could you dip the Hamantaschen, the entire Hamantaschen into the chocolate?
What a great question. Can you dip the entire Hamantaschen into the chocolate? Well, that was the whole purpose of melting chocolate to begin with. I wouldn't want to cheat you out of any part of the lesson, of course. The idea was to find one. Here's a raspberry one. It's nice and good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to, you want to show the camera? We put it right down in the chocolate. And then all we do is we go ahead and ladle the chocolate right over the top of it. I like to go ahead and get the whole Hamantaschen dipped in there real nice. This gets back to when I was telling you about the turtle type of Hamantaschen. You dip the whole thing. This one, for years, I would go ahead and just dip a little bit of it. So it gives it a little bit of contrast to the way it looks when it comes out. If you're having a party, a dinner party at home, and you want to go ahead and make these, and you can make a what's called a tuxedo type of Hamantaschen, where you dip the whole Hamantaschen in milk in chocolate, dark chocolate, and then you take a little bit of it and dip it in what's called white chocolate. Even though there's no such thing as white chocolate, it's more of like almond bark actually, but it tastes really good. Now this is going to be a delicious Hamantaschen. All righty. Hope everybody has had a really great time here with my lovely wife, Jody, my production manager here at Chef Marshall's Cafe 17. It's been a pleasure being with you again. I look forward to next month. Let me see. We need to look at the list. Next month, we are going to be doing, this one is actually, I believe, for Pesach. It's called a Gan Eden cake. It's a layer cake with an orange marmalade filling. So I hope that you all come back and join me and my lovely wife again here in our lovely kitchen and have a wonderful time. Was there any more questions?
There was just one last one, in reference to the chocolate. Will it end up hardening then?
So yes. So you mean on the Hamantaschen?
Correct.
Okay. So if you notice, you could see it sticks, but if you notice, it's starting to glaze. Okay. When you melt your chocolate, the two things you can do to melt your chocolate. You can add a little bit of butter if you want, but remember, dark chocolate, you're taking the milk solids out. So it has this specific glistening to it. A lot of times what you might do when you're done here is go ahead and put it in the refrigerator. That'll harden it up relatively quick, but you don't want to do it too long because again, what you're doing is you're producing like a hardened shell and there's condensation that goes on in the refrigerator. And this, we don't want that to dry out. So yeah, it'll start to harden up right after you take it out of the chocolate. So again, it's been a real pleasure. I enjoy our time together. I can't wait for next month. And I hope that all of you are faring this beautiful spring weather that we've been having here in Northwest Ohio. Enjoy
Not
some
so much here in Buffalo.
Yeah. Enjoy some Hamantaschens. This is an easy recipe. Everybody should be able to do it. Send me some pictures. I would love to see what you come up with.
Yeah, and if anyone experiments a little bit more and comes up with some other different combinations, definitely share them with the group. And before I let you go, we're a little bit earlier than a full month for this next one because of the holiday coming up. So I think actually the next one, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but I think we're sneaking it in like right maybe the last week in March.
Yeah,
if I'm correct. So, but I'll send everybody out a reminder. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much, Chef. Enjoy those Hamantaschen. Bye-bye.
Got it. Bye-bye.